I'm back. Happy Thursday to everyone. This is my first official real video here on my booktube channel. I'm kind of nervous about it, but today I have my top 15 books of 2018. This has been a really good reading year for me, and I have read, as of today, I've read 119 books, and I'm about halfway through number 120, so there's still some potential, obviously, that I could read other books that are my favorites of the year, but as of right now, I don't think any of the ones on the rest of my TBR really will be, and if they are, then I'll include them on my 2019 most favorite books of the year. I'm guessing that I'll probably end up with about 125 books in 2018. My goal was 115, so I'll probably beat my goal by about 10, which is pretty awesome, considering I've been in a little bit of a reading slump from July to October. July to October has been a little bit of a reading slump for me. But I have my top 15 books of the year here for you guys today, and I actually was able to put them in an order. That was pretty cool. I've never been able to put my top books in an order before. I've maybe had my top 2 books of the year, but I've never been able to rank them all in that order. So let's just go ahead and get right on into the video. Okay, so I'm gonna start from my, I don't want to say least favorite because these are all my favorite books, so not really least favorite, but my lowest one on my list, but it's still really good. So coming in at number 15 is The Queen's Rising by Rebecca Ross. I loved this book this year. This was one of the first books I read. I read it in January, and it was so much fun. It wasn't what I was expecting at all, because I was expecting it to be kind of your traditional fantasy book, but it's really not. It's really not fantasy, really that much, other than it's set in kind of a fantasy world. But the real thing that I loved about this book was each of the kingdoms are kind of inspired by a different real world kingdom, like Scotland or France, and I thought that was really cool. But yeah, there's not too much magic in this, so don't go ahead and expect that when you go into it, but I really enjoyed this book from Rebecca Ross, and I'm really excited for the sequel. Okay, so number 14 is a graphic novel, and at the beginning of the year I was super obsessed with graphic novels. I just couldn't get enough. So one of my very favorites was Lumberjanes, and I believe this is written by Noelle Stevenson. And Noelle Stevenson, Ellis Waters, and Allen. I don't know who any of those last people are, but Noelle Stevenson is one of my favorite graphic novel writers. I absolutely love the things that she writes. She also wrote Nimona, which I read earlier this year and really enjoyed as well. But Lumberjanes was one of my favorites. I read the first 6, I think. I read the first 6 volumes, and I loved them all so much. So if you're looking for a really fun, adventuring story all about girls, this is a great series to pick up. Okay, number 13 is one I've read really recently, and it is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I loved this book so much. I just could not put it down. I just needed to find out what happens in this book. It's kind of like a true crime book where it's two sides of a coin. One is following this girl Sadie, who is she's in grieving after her sister was murdered, and she's trying to find out what happened to her sister, and she thinks she knows who killed her sister, and so she's trying to find that person and get revenge. But on the other side, there's a man who's doing a podcast about her sister's death, and then also about where Sadie is, because nobody knows where she went. She just went missing because she's went off on this journey trying to find her sister's killer. And so it's half in podcast form and then half following Sadie. So I absolutely loved the format of this book, and I've heard the audiobook is incredible and that they really set up a whole podcast for the podcast chapters. So I'm actually interested in rereading or listening to the podcast, even though I read the physical form of this book, just because of that element. And I love true crime. I love true crime podcasts. I love true crime shows. It's just something that I'm really interested in. So if you like true crime, I definitely would recommend picking up this book. Okay, so now at number 12, and if I get these numbers mixed up, please forgive me guys, because I I'm pretty sure I'm at number 12, but I guess I'll find out at the end if I'm at number 1 or not. But okay, number 12 is The Way You Make Me Feel by Maureen Gu. I love this book, and if you guys watched my introduction to my channel, you'll know I don't typically enjoy reading contemporary at all, but this book is so cute. Although the main character is extremely bratty, and I did not enjoy that at all, but the story itself was so much fun. It takes place, it's following this girl, and her dad owns a Korean food truck, and I'm just like, it made me hungry reading this book, and I had to I actually went to a Korean food truck that is similar to Cobra, which is the one that's in here. Hers is like a Korean Brazilian fusion food truck, and I went to a Korean fusion food truck as well after reading this because I could not get it out of my mind. And I love books that have anything to do with food as well, so this was so cute. And the love interest is named Hamlet, and he is like the sweetest thing on the planet. And I was doing a thing one time where somebody asked me like if you could mash up two people from 2 different books and like make them a couple. It would be Hamlet from this book with Laura Jean from To All the Boys I Loved Before. They'd make the cutest couple on the planet, and I want that to happen so badly. I really want Maureen Gu to team up with Jenny Han and write like a Laura Jean in college where she's like with Hamlet. Like that would be the best thing for me, but I know it's not gonna happen, but it would be so stinking cute. But yeah, this is a really fun, super fast book. I just really enjoyed it. It's not anything super substantial, but so fun. A great summer read if you're looking for something to like pick up by the pool or something. This would be a really good one to do. Coming in at number 11 is We All Looked Up by Tommy Wallach. I read this book in September, I believe, and it is really good. I really liked it a lot. It's taking place as basically scientists have figured out that there's this meteor that's going to be striking the Earth, possibly. It has like a 70% chance of striking the Earth, and if it does, like of course almost everyone is going to die. So people are kind of living in a like riot state almost. Like people are looting and doing all this terrible things because they feel like they're going to die soon because of the meteor hitting Earth. But then, you know, there's this small percent chance that it's not going to hit Earth. So this was just really well written. It follows a bunch of different characters, like 6 teenagers, and it's kind of like all from different walks of life and how each one of them is coping with this inevitability kind of thing where it's like, I don't know, am I going to be going to college in the fall that I've been working so hard to do? Am I even going to be doing that? And I just really liked it. I thought it was really well written. I liked all the characters. I thought they were all interesting to read from. I liked all the perspectives, and it's definitely one. It obviously made the top 15. Okay, so number 10, yeah, I think this is number 10, Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This book is the sequel to Caraval, which was one of my favorites of 2017. And I loved this one so stinking much. I did have a few issues with it, but not really so much. It was like all issues that made it better, kind of, but my problem was that the characters didn't feel cohesive with how they were in the first book. So like in Caraval, they had a really distinct personality and they felt differently in this book. So, but it was better. Like this book was better than Caraval. Like the characters are better, but they just weren't cohesive with the first book. But I still love this. And if you read Caraval and were kind of like iffy about continuing with it, because I know I know some people didn't love it as much as I did, I definitely would recommend still picking up Legendary because it's a lot different than Caraval. Okay, coming up at number 9, we have Girl in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow. This book is a very emotional book and definitely not one I would recommend to everyone. It deals with a lot of really heavy topics such as self-harm, suicide, drugs, drug addiction. So it's a very serious book, but it was so well written, and it made me cry, which I rarely ever do in books. There's probably been like maybe three or four books that's made me cry in my entire life, and actually one of them is my number 1 choice for the year. But anyway, we'll get to that later. But yeah, this book is very, very hard hitting, and definitely not something that's a very light read at all. I'm really looking forward to more from Kathleen Glasgow, and I was so shocked to find out that this was her debut novel. And it's also an Own Voices novel, so she dealt with a lot of the problems that the main character deals with, so she is speaking from her own personal experience, which I really appreciate. But yeah, this book is really hard to read. I'm not going to say that it's not, because it's very difficult to read, but Kathleen Glasgow is such an amazing author, and I cannot wait to read her latest book that's coming up. I think in April her next book is coming out, and I'm really excited to read that as well. Okay, coming up at number 9 on my list is the very last contemporary-ish on my list. So 9 is the highest that they got, and that is Challenger Deep by Neil Schusterman. This is the first of 2 books on this list, so get ready for a Neil Schusterman book coming up later on too. But this book is following a boy who has schizophrenia, and it's his perspective as he's dealing with delusions, hallucinations, things like that. And holy moly, it was so good. And one thing I really appreciated about this too is that Neil Schusterman's son is schizophrenic, and so he was not speaking from his own personal experience, but he has a different perspective because his son was one of the not sensitivity readers, but you know, like a sensitivity reader. So his son was one who read it and kind of gave his perspective on how accurate it was, but he also had such a good, it was just amazing, and it's not what I was expecting going into it at all, but it was so good, and it's definitely deserving of the National Book Award winner. I lied. This one is number 8, not number 9. As I said, most likely going to get confused on which books were which numbers, but this was number 8 on my list, and Girl in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow was number 9. Okay, now for number 7, I have Gemina by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. Holy moly, this book is a wild ride. This whole series is just like so good. This is definitely my favorite of the entire series. But I will say, I love Ezra the best. I know all of you people out there can be like, oh, Nick. No, Ezra is where my heart is. But this storyline was so stinking good, and this is something like so random, but something I really appreciate about this book, because it's like action. It's like so action filled, and in movies and stuff, and I understand why they take this out, and in books, but they just show people like going. It's like, how are they going for like 7 days? Like, don't they ever sleep? In this book, talks about them sleeping and resting like in the middle of all this action, which I appreciated, because I'm like, that's very realistic, because even though I understand like they have to take out these like slow things to keep the story moving, but like at least acknowledge that they're like taking some time off. But I appreciated that about this book, even though it's like something so random. But anyway, this is number 7 on my list. Loved it, loved this whole series. Definitely would recommend, even if you're intimidated by the format. It goes by so fast because of the format. So even though it's a long book, it's like a very quick read because a lot of the pages aren't like full of text. I would definitely still recommend picking this up, even if you're one that's intimidated by the format it's in. Okay, number 6 is another series continuation, and that is Restore Me by Tahereh and Mafi. And this is the 4th book in the Shatter Me series, and yes, I am so excited that we're getting more of this series. Like, I am so late to the train here. I only read Shatter Me, the whole original trilogy, last year. So in 2017 I read the original Shatter Me trilogy, and it blew my mind, and I was like, how have I not read this sooner? I could not believe that I lived 23 years without Warner in my life. Like, and I was so sad when it ended, because I thought, what in the world, like, they can keep going. And they are keeping going, and there's so much more story to tell, which I appreciate about that too, because sometimes series continues when it's kind of like there's not as much story left to tell, but this has a lot of story left, and I'm so excited to see what comes in the next book, Define Me, that's coming out this year. I just can't wait for more. Okay, number 5 is my second Neil Schusterman book, and it is Dry, which was written with his son Jared Schusterman, and I've met both of them actually at Y'all West in 2017, and they were both really nice, and I talked to Neil and stuff, and that was when I had only read his Unwind dystology, and I was talking to him about that. But anyway, Dry is so stinking good. It just came out in October, and I got an arc of it, so I read it over the summer. And you guys, like, when you're reading this book, you need to have like 15 gallons of water by you, because it'll make you so stinking thirsty. It's about kind of like, what if California ran out of water? And it seemed so realistic when you're reading this book. And because it's a problem that's actually being dealt with in California right now, is about droughts, and just they always are dealing with a drought. This book was so good. It was so realistic. It felt like everything that happened felt like it was real life. Like, I just loved this book, and this was really, really good. Number 4 of my top 15 books of 2018 is Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. This book, you guys, and I have the pretty copy with the stained edges. This book went places I never thought it would go. It tied in with Daughter and Smoke and Bone, but holy moly. This series is just so good. Laini Taylor is just like the master of writing anything, and I will read anything that she writes. This book is just so good. This series, this duology, so stinking good. I can't wait to see what comes from her next now that this series is done with, and now that Daughter, Smoke and Bone is also done with. I can't wait to see what comes from this next. Guys, we're at the top 3. We are now to my top 3 favorite books of all of 2018, and I can't even believe that I read these books this year. They are just so amazing. I found a new all-time favorite series, and that's my number 1. So if you've been following me on Instagram, you probably already know what it is, but if you're not, follow me. It's at Stars Above Jess. Okay, but number 3. I'll just go ahead and just start talking about number 3. Fury Born by Claire Legrand. This book is, this was my number 1 favorite book of the year until probably July. I was so obsessed with this book. It is just amazing. It's more than I could have ever thought. I went into it not even knowing one thing about the whole book. I had an art copy of it, and I did not know anything what this book was about. But I will tell you what it's about. It's about 2 queens, a Sun Queen, the Sun Crown, and the Blood Queen, the Blood Crown. And there was a prophecy that said that at some point in time there would be 2 queens, a Sun Queen to save the world and a Blood Queen to break the world. And so these Sun Queens and Blood Queens would be one that's the master of all the elements, when most people only have powers of one element, but they would be a master of all of them. And so it's following 2 different girls, and you don't know which one is which. And they're 1,000 years apart. So by the time the second one comes around, the first queen is just like a legend. Like, they don't even know if she's like actually real. She was just, because it's like so far in the past. Like, it's just like a legend about her. But the prophecy has to come true, so it's like the developments with that, and so it's dual perspective of 1,000 years, and you're trying to figure out which one is which, and it is so stinking good. I loved every second of reading this, and I can't wait for the sequel to come out next year, because first of all, the cover is so gorgeous, and the cover of the second one is beautiful too, and I just can't wait. I just can't wait to see what else happens in these series. Like, I don't know if I'm ready for it, but I'm super excited for it. My number 2 choice, you know, if this book is my second choice of the year, my second top book of the year, my first book must be stinking amazing. But my second book of the year, Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is the finale to Throne of Glass, the series, the 7th book in the series, and it is giant. It's almost 1,000 pages long, and it was just as amazing as I could have ever expected. There's nothing I wanted more from this. It was just what I needed. The only thing I wanted more was more pages, and I don't know how you'll ever hear me say that, because this long of a book usually will take me like months to read, because I just have such a trouble reading such long books like this. But I could read anything by Sarah J. Maas and it could be like 2,000 pages and I would finish it in a week. But I just love this whole thing. My OTP, Alide, and Lorcan. Oh, my OTP of this series is always Sam and Selena. Like, to my core, I am a Sam Cortland stan. Like, I just cannot get enough of Sam, and he breaks my heart, but I let him. But this book just made me love Alide and Lorcan. Like, they're so stinking sweet. I just couldn't get over it, and I'm so sad that I'm never gonna see them again. But the World of Throne of Glass is still coming out next year, and so I'm hoping that there'll be some more, because I just am so sad that we're not getting any more of the series. So we have come to the finale of my top 15 books of the year, and I'm gonna cheat a little bit because I really have one favorite, but my number one choice is actually a whole series. But I will talk about the whole series, and I'll just talk about my very favorite one, and that series is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, the Red Rising trilogy. I know that there's more to this, and I know there's more coming, but I haven't read Iron Gold yet. But this series like captured my whole being. I read it all. Like, I never ever binge series. Like, I usually read one book and then it takes me like months to continue on with the series. Like, maybe in a couple months I'll read the second one. This I read like one after the other, and I could not get enough. Like, I'm so excited that I don't have to be done with just Morning Star, because I need more, because I am obsessed with Darrow. I love everything that happens in these books. They're all like heart-wrenching. They keep me on the edge of my seat, like I have to know what happens next. I will say, if you haven't read the series yet and you're starting out with Red Rising, this book, the whole series really went in a completely different way than I even thought was. I knew it took place on Mars, and it's like a sci-fi, and that's all I knew about this series before I started it. But it's way different than that. Like, it's not even anything like that at all. So the first like 100 pages of this book can be a little bit slow for some people. I was fine reading it. I don't really mind a slow book that much, but I know some people have said like the first 100 pages was difficult for them to get through. But after that, the story just like completely changes. Like, it goes in a completely different direction than what you're thinking when you're reading the first 100 pages. It's kind of like a Gladiator Hunger Games. Who knew? But yeah, that's what this book is about, Gladiator Hunger Games. But my favorite, so this is actually my number one favorite book of the year, but I feel like I had to give an honorary mention to the whole series, because the whole series was just like, I just loved it. But my very favorite book of the series was the last one, Morning Star. I was mourning at the end of this book because, gosh, this is like one of the only other books that's ever made me cry. At the end, I'm like sitting there crying, and I'm like, I'm crying right now. Like, I never cry during books. Like, really, maybe there's been 5 books in my whole life that I've cried in, and this book like was one that I had to be telling my husband about like every second I was reading it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this just happened, like, oh my goodness. Like, I just don't have any other words to say other than, if you haven't read the series yet and you are a science fiction fan, like, you're not ready to read it, but you have to. Okay guys, that's the end of my top 15. I am so happy to get to talk about these books now. Like, I haven't compiled my top list until just like right before I filmed this. I just knew that's what I was gonna be filming, and I'm so like, talking about all these books just makes me feel like so happy, like talking about all my favorites. But if any of these books were on your top favorite list of the year, like, I want to know, like, if you agree with me, like if any of these books were like so amazing that you had to put them on your top list too. And if you haven't read these books and they seem like something that would interest you, like this kind of genre that would interest you, definitely go pick them up, go read them. And they're just also amazing. And also, a lot of these are available on Book Outlet, and I have a $10 off coupon for you guys. This is not like an affiliate, like I don't make any money off it, but if you guys spend $10 through my link down below, then I get $10 off as well. So it's kind of like a mutually beneficial thing. But yes, I had such a great reading year in 2018. I loved so many books. I found so many new favorites, new like all-time favorite books. Like Red Rising is now my all-time favorite series of like life. I can't wait to reread it again whenever I get time to reread it. But thank you guys so much for watching my video, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!